Get ready for a night of chills, where reality is confused with nightmare. Today I bring you a dark story, straight from the depths of a young girl's mind. A story where invisible friendships can be more deadly than they seem. In peaceful New Jersey, a family finds themselves trapped by a presence that no one can see except their own daughter. An imaginary friend, perhaps. Or something much more sinister, which has ambitious plans for his younger brother and his own mother. But be careful, this friend may be closer than you think. Welcome, dear listeners, to the story of the invisible friend. The screams started 3 weeks ago. At first, Kelly just said she didn't want to sleep because her friend wouldn't let her. We thought it was just teenage boredom, especially after the recent separation between me and my ex-wife. Her brother, Matt, just shook his head, annoyed. He didn't understand why his sister was acting that way. But when she started talking about killing, everything changed. Kelly was 15, and she had always been a quiet girl. But after the separation, something drastically changed in her. She kept talking about a friend, something that initially seemed harmless. We thought it was a phase, maybe a way of coping with the chaos at home. Until one night, she looked me dead in the eyes and said her friend had told her to kill Matt. I was sitting on the couch when I heard her voice through the cracked door. Kelly was whispering like she was having a conversation. When I asked who she was talking to, she laughed, but it was a nervous laugh. My friend, she replied. I asked her more about this friend, and she just stared at me, unblinking, and said she doesn't like Matt. She wants him dead. And Mom too. My body froze. I tried talking to my ex-wife, but she brushed it off as teenage drama. You worry too much, she's just acting out her frustration, she said. But I knew it was more than that. That very night, Matt woke up crying, saying he saw Kelly standing in the middle of their room, staring at him. He swore she was talking to someone in the dark. I decided to sleep on the couch, near their room. But during the night, I heard footsteps. Slowly, I went to the hallway. Kelly was standing in the middle, looking right at me, but she didn't seem like herself. Her eyes were empty, cold. She said in a voice that didn't sound like hers, she wants Matt. She'll do it. The next morning, I tried to convince her to see a psychologist, but Kelly went hysterical. She screamed, throwing things, saying her friend wouldn't allow it. My ex didn't know what to do and eventually agreed. We went to a session, but the doctor only suggested light medication. It didn't seem enough. Then Matt started getting sick. He complained of a tightness in his chest, like something was suffocating him. His nightmares were constant. He said Kelly's friend came every night and stood at the foot of his bed. He looked pale, with deep circles under his eyes. Kelly, on the other hand, was growing more distant, colder. That week, I found crosses made of dry twigs under Matt's bed. Kelly started drawing strange symbols on her bedroom walls with red paint. She said it was her friend telling her to do it to protect us all. But it was clear this wasn't protection. I didn't know what else to do. I went to the local church and spoke with Father Samuel. He listened seriously but didn't seem surprised. I've heard similar stories before, he said. It might be more than just a psychological issue. He agreed to come to the house to see what he could do, though he remained skeptical. When the priest arrived, Kelly locked herself in her room, screaming that he wasn't welcome. Matt, on the other hand, was restless, complaining of intense headaches. The priest said a prayer in the living room, and that's when things got worse. Kelly started banging on the door, screaming that her friend was furious. She wouldn't stop shouting, pounding the wood with force. The priest looked at me, visibly shaken. He said he would need help, that this was beyond his capabilities. But before he could leave, Kelly's door burst open. She was standing there with a bizarre smile on her face, her eyes glazed over. She's here, she said, pointing to the empty air beside her. She wants to talk to you. The air felt heavy. The priest began praying again, but Kelly started screaming, scratching at herself as if trying to tear something out from inside her. The sound of her screams was deafening. Suddenly, everything went silent. Kelly collapsed to the floor, but before she did, she whispered, "She won't stop until she gets what she wants." I took Kelly back to the doctor, but nothing helped. By then, Matt was completely terrified, refusing to be in the same room as his sister. He kept saying Kelly's friend was getting closer every night. The priest, now fully convinced this was no mere fantasy, brought another clergyman to help. That night, they decided to perform a special prayer in Kelly's room. As they prayed, the lights began flickering and a foul odor filled the air. Kelly started convulsing in her bed, her eyes rolling back as she mumbled incomprehensible things. It was as if something had taken over her. The fear on Matt's face was clear. He looked at me and said, "She's here, Dad. Right behind you." I quickly turned, but I saw nothing, just a chilling coldness creeping up my spine. Something was terribly wrong. It felt like the house itself was turning against us. The next night was even worse. I woke up to find Kelly sitting at the edge of Matt's bed, whispering something in his ear. I rushed to her, but when I tried to pull her away, she pushed me with a strength that wasn't human. The look on her face wasn't hers. She smiled again and said, "Now she wants you too." Desperate, I begged the priest to do something. He agreed to perform an exorcism, even though he wasn't authorized by the church. This was a last resort. Kelly wasn't herself anymore. She spent all her time muttering to the empty space, talking to this friend that now seemed more real than ever. During the exorcism, things escalated. Kelly screamed, her eyes rolled back, as the priest struggled to maintain control. Suddenly, the window shattered, and a gust of wind rushed in, almost knocking everything over. "She won't leave," Kelly screamed, her voice distorted, like two voices speaking at once. The exorcism lasted for hours. The room was a wreck, and the priest was exhausted. But when it finally ended, Kelly collapsed, unconscious. The silence was deafening. The priest, sweaty and trembling, just whispered, "She's gone, for now." Kelly never returned to her old self. She was admitted to a psychiatric facility soon after, and Matt began to have a more peaceful life. But every now and then, he still wakes up screaming in the middle of the night, saying he feels someone standing by his bed. Something tells me that this friend never really left. And every time I pass Kelly's empty room, I get a chill down my spine. As if someone is watching me.